So I'm having a look at this Street Fighter 35th logo that they've just put out, and it's been annoying me ever since I saw it. Like, every time I look at it, I just think this is wrong. This is wrong. It doesn't fit. There's a lot of mistakes I think that are on it, and to the untrained eye, it's just a logo. But I'm gonna go through a few of the things on it. I'll try and keep the terminology to a minimum. Um, I mean, not a lot of people are typographers, but we'll we'll go through it, and hopefully you can understand why I've made a couple of changes in my version. Bear in mind, my version did it in 10 minutes. It's not super high resolution or anything like that. I haven't redrawn anything, just a few cut and paste jobs, and making it look, how I think that interpretation of a 35th anniversary logo should look if everything was correct. But yeah, hopefully, when you're watching it and you listen to my points I'm making, you can understand where I'm coming from, and how maybe Capcom could do a little better moving forward. I don't know, this sort of stuff should be on lock. But anyway, I hope you enjoy. Peace. So I think to start with, what you have to do when you're examining and critiquing something like this is that you have to look at the inspiration and the where it came from, the concept. And the concept of this one is the Street Fighter 2 logo, the original logo. So when I'm looking at the Street Fighter 2 logo, there's possibly three main things that define it. So number one being the red and yellow gradient. Back in the day, there was a lot of arcade games that were really trying to push the envelope in terms of colours and how many colours they could display on screen, and there was a lot of logos in arcade games that used gradients to try and show that off. Street Fighter 2, no exception. It's the first thing you see after the guy getting punched. It's basically just a red and yellow gradient, and you thought, wow, look at the shading. But it was impressive back in the day, and it looked good in pixel art. When you look at it, as the drawn finished product, it still looks good. And it's it's its defining feature, I would say. The colouring of it. It's then also been used in just about every other version of Street Fighter. Street Fighter 3, the original, used the red and yellow. Street Fighter 4 did. Street Fighter 5 did. Street Fighter Zero Alpha, they used it to some extent. So the gradient's quite important in defining the look of the logo. So with the 35th anniversary logo, they definitely filched that, and they wanted to use it. And why not? It looks good. The second feature, I would say, is the stroke used to do each character. So it's kind of got like this brush stroke effect, but it's with like a tattered edge, which makes it kind of look rough and ready. It's quite fitting for the name Street Fighter. And none of the type actually overlaps. It only happens once in it, but it's kind of unavoidable, really. It has to be that way. If you look at in Street, where the R and the E kind of overlap with each other, that's the only time it really happens. Every other time, the letters never overlap, but they have a very rigid and kind of close proximity to each other, so that the legibility is still pretty high. I mean, if the R and the E didn't overlap and the E was pushed to the right more, you'd have this real gaping white space, which wouldn't look good. It wouldn't make sense. So it happening that once ties it together. But the way that the type's laid out in it is it makes it very legible. So that's another key thing. And finally, the third feature of the logo is the baseline and the cap line, and how it doesn't use a straight cap line or a straight baseline at all. It has this kind of dynamic, sort of off kilter look to it. It's not straight, and if you follow the baseline from the F all the way to the R, through each of the letters, it's not a straight line. It's a curved line all the way through, and this curved line is mirrored with the cap line as well, and it gives it this really dynamic look. It also helps as well with the drop shadow. With that kind of cap line and base line being as dynamic as it is, it helps the 3D look of the drop shadow. It only makes it pop more. So those three things, I would say, are what define that particular logo, and it's what they're trying to carry over to the 35th anniversary logo, which is fair enough because it's very recognisable, it's iconic, and you know, it's 35th anniversary. Of course, you're going to go back to the stuff that's worked. So what this is here is some notes that I made when I was examining it myself and analysing what I would say are mistakes in the execution of this logo. Now, I don't think it's badly drawn. I think it's pretty well drawn. It's obviously been drawn from scratch there, because the original logos didn't use numbers really. It used Roman numerals, and you know, you're limited to the letters that are in the word Street Fighter. But there's a number of things that just jump out at me. And when you look at it from a distance as well, it doesn't tie itself together. There's no consistency in design through any of it. So I'm going to go through the four main notes that I've made here. And there are a few other small things that are wrong with it, but I think are wrong with it anyway. But I'll go through each one, and we'll see where we end up with. Okay. So to start off with, we'll start with the number 3. So it's not bad in terms of how it's drawn. It's just that when you pair it with the number 5, it doesn't really work. The legibility is pretty low on it. Normally, when I would do something like this, like a stroke for like a number 3, I'd start with the top, and it would curve in a little bit more towards the centre of the 3, because if you have that kind of 30-degree angle, the dynamic angle that they use in the Street Fighter logo, then it just helps the cap line a lot more. I'll explain. The cap line is the top bit. You know, you've got like the base line that you'd write on. The cap line is the very top of what the capital letter would be. So with this, I mean, it'll make a bit more sense when I talk about the 5, but if that just curved inwards towards the centre of it a bit more, it would definitely improve the legibility of it. The next part I would say is, I mean, it's not really it is a mistake, but I mean, I think it's a schoolboy error more than anything. So first off, they're using lowercase type in a Street Fighter logo, and I know it's not a main Street Fighter logo, but it's trying to mimic the sensibilities of the Street Fighter 2 logo. That didn't use lowercase type at all. I know that if you're using TH to, you know, if you're going to write 35th and you do a TH, if you're writing it down on a bit of paper, you would write it as a lowercase t and a lowercase h. But we're not writing prose, we're not writing copy or anything like that. We're not writing a letter. We're doing logo type. It's there for two main things, for its aesthetic value and for its legibility. It needs to tie everything together, look good, and be readable. And I think this TH is just totally doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense in terms of the Street Fighter 2 logo or even the 35. It doesn't even tie in with that. It's totally inconsistent. If you look at the way that the strokes are in it, they're all completely angular. The typeface, or rather the strokes used in the Street Fighter 2 logo, there are no straight lines in it. It's all curved. Every part of it is just curved. This is extremely angular, and it just doesn't, it's not even matching. It doesn't make sense. The only thing I would say that is really a plus that ties it into the original Street Fighter 2 logo is that the flick on the end of the H matches exactly with the flick on the Roman numeral 2 in the Street Fighter 2 logo, which is good. It means I've thought about it, but you know, I just think it's not good. I mean, why not just use the capital letters? Use capital TH from the Street Fighter 2 logo. It makes more sense. I would say the last main thing with the type is on the 5. Now, if you look at the 5 from a distance along with the 3, the 5 looks like it's a different size completely. Now, in the Street Fighter 2 logo, it did play about with different size lettering, such as the S and the F being much bigger than anything else. But at the same time, everything was tied together with the baseline and the cap line, so it had this dynamic look, but it was all tied together and it looked consistent and it read really well. With this, it doesn't. Like, there's no reason for that 5 to be bigger than the 3. It's noticeably bigger as well. The cap line on it along the top is just, it's much higher. You can see how the top of the 3 is meant to follow with the bottom of the stroke at the top of the 5. But that doesn't make sense. Just have it all run as one consistent through line through it, and it'll just look a lot better. It'll look more consistent. Plus, whatever's behind it, that daft rectangle thing that says Street Fighter, it'd make that look a bit better as well. It'd have a smoother line. You could read the street better. It'd just be so much better to have it all flowing with the same base and cap line. I don't understand why they did it that way. It just doesn't make sense. So this is quite a minor thing, this last one. The black I don't like this black rectangular background anyway, other than the fact that the borders aren't matching. They don't look at the spacing on it all, man. It's all off. The white border's awful. But anyway, the fact that it's black is a big issue. It crushes the drop shadow on the 3 and the 5 too much, so that it diminishes the 3D effect. I mean, if that was a lighter shade, like a grey, like a dark grey instead, and then you had a real jet black drop shadow, there wouldn't be any need to have that added white accent to give it, that gives the 3 and the 5 that 3D look. Wouldn't be needed. The original Street Fighter 2 logo didn't need it, and that had that 3D effect anyway, and it was legible. It just doesn't, it's not needed at all. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why it's like that. I mean, personally, I don't even think that black rectangle's even needed anyway. All they would need to do is 35th anniversary. That's it. Doesn't need anything else. Or even just 35th on its own, but never mind. That's just the way I would do it. So that's, in brief, what I think of that logo and just how I think it could be improved. So what I'm going to show next is a few small changes that I've made to this logo that I think just makes it so much better. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the design in general anyway. Like I said, I don't like the black rectangle. I think, there's other ideas, there's other concepts that could have been approached there. But yeah, here's my version anyway. Okay, so this is my version of it. And like I said, I haven't redrawn any of these sections, and it's pretty low res, but all of them has taken the Street Fighter 2 logo and just built upon it, as well as taking the 35th logo there and built upon that. So the first thing is the 3, which as you can see, I've curved inwards a bit more, so that it's curved inwards towards the centre a bit more. And if you look, the cap line has this curve to it now that follows along with the 5. So it's got this smooth transition across, and then when it comes round, it curves back through with the flourish on the end of the 5. Same with the baseline. The baseline is now curved in line with that. So it's completely consistent, and this is totally in line with how the Street Fighter 2 logo was done. It just makes it way more readable. It gives it a nice little shape with the black background as well. It's a lot more balanced with a black background as well, but you don't get this kind of higgledy-piggledy shape of the rectangle. You just get this sort of curved cut along the top and a curved cut along the bottom, which just makes it look a lot cleaner and more professional. In addition, I've taken out the lowercase t and h because it was awful. I think that's the cardinal sin that they've committed there, really. And what I did, I just cut the T and the H from the Street Fighter 2 logo and just positioned it so that it, it kind of matched and flowed with the baseline of the 3 and the 5, as well as, balanced it as well in terms of size and thickness. A couple of things I changed about the black background. I lightened the shade of it, so it was like a sort of dark grey, and that way that the drop shadow actually pops a lot more. It actually looks like a drop shadow. It's got more of a 3D effect. And then just a minor thing, I just changed the anniversary to like a gold sort of look. I mean, Street Fighter's always had this thing with a gold appearance, and that was only done very quickly anyway, but I think it works in colour anyway. And in addition, I think my version actually works better in grayscale. So if you take the gradient out of it, so you just got white text, and then you've got the black background, it really pops. I think that looks really, really cool. You could have that on, say, I don't know, a disc or something like that. Street Fighter 6, the disc art could just have that in black and white, and it look really swish. But I think this is just a massive improvement from my perspective anyway. I think it just works a lot better. It's more in keeping with the Street Fighter 2 aesthetic, and it just looks way more professional, even if it's just been done in like 10 minutes in 72 DPI. But I don't know, let me know what you think. I mean, everyone's different, everyone's got an opinion. This is just what I think, and I think it just looks a little better. I just wish Capcom put a bit more time, a bit more thought into these things, respected their own lineage, their own heritage a bit better, and the legacy. These games deserve a lot of love, and they just don't get it. They're really not getting it lately. Let's be honest. They're really not. Stop kidding yourself, everyone. That these games are not getting a lot of money put into them. But yeah, that's pretty much me. I had to scratch an itch with this one. Peace.